What the hell is he thinking? Every woman who's ever had an avoidant ex asks this question. Many of these women write me emails that begin like this. What's on his mind? Adam, does he love me? Did he ever love me? Or does he hate me? What is he thinking about right now? Does he want to get back together? Or has he already moved on? The reason these women are writing to me is because I am Adam Lane Smith, the attachment specialist. I help people sort through attachment issues, especially avoidant attachment style. I have many avoidant men coming to me and I help them figure out exactly what they're thinking and also what they're looking for in relationships. I also help a lot of women recover after these relationships, and I help couples navigate through this together so that they don't break up. Today, I'd like you to just sit back and let me decode avoidant men thinking for you. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly how to read an avoidant man's mind and what your ex is thinking. So today, let's dig into the brain of an avoidant man. And this is one of the biggest questions I get. How does an avoidant man's brain work? Does it work the same as everybody else's? You're going to need to understand his thinking and his brain processes before you can really see the world through his eyes. So if you're hoping to get him back, or if you just want closure in your relationship, this process we're going to go through right now is going to help you make sense of what he's been doing. Okay? There are 5 brain chemicals that you must know about and how avoidant men receive them. Number 1, avoidant men are on the dopamine cycle endlessly. Now, they have high cortisol in their brain. Cortisol is that stress chemical that releases. It makes you amped up. It makes you hypervigilant. It makes you very aware of problems so that you then solve them quicker. It's very akin to adrenaline. It makes you amped up, and you get a lot of adrenaline when the cortisol goes even higher and you detect a higher level of threat. A lot of avoidant men are constantly assessing risk, so there's high levels of cortisol in their system all the time. They bring that down through temporary binges of dopamine. This is how most of them are functioning. There are other brain chemicals you have to know about though, okay? Oxytocin. Oxytocin is the love hormone. It helps you to feel loved and cared for and nurtured in your relationships. It releases when your cortisol is low, when somebody holds your hand, when they talk with you, when they brush your cheek, when they compliment you, when they just share a great conversation with you, when they open up to you. Oxytocin helps release GABA, G-A-B-A. Now, GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter that stops future floods of cortisol. It diminishes the stress impact. It also helps you release melatonin to sleep better at night. So if you have high GABA, you probably don't have many issues with insomnia. Number 3 is vasopressin. Vasopressin is a hormone released when you overcome cortisol and reduce it with the help of somebody else. It helps you to trust other people by solving problems with them. Number 4 is serotonin. Serotonin releases when you have good, open conversations with others, when you experience relaxing moments in meditation or in enjoying a really pleasurable hobby, long-term, not dopamine, but long-term thinking. A wonderful interaction with a person, a wonderful, intimate connection with another human being. Great sources of serotonin. And then again, that dopamine on the end. Binging on the dopamine. It's meant to be a short-term little receptor that says, wow, that felt good. Let's remember that. Now, when you have avoidant attachment style, your brain looks like this because your high cortisol blocks the reception of oxytocin, and you probably didn't get much in childhood. Okay. So you don't really know what it looks like or feels like. Your avoidant ex probably doesn't have the understanding of what oxytocin feels like. He may never have felt loved in his life, and that's sad. But that's also why he's also usually not affectionate toward you. He can give other people dopamine and mimic short-term the look and appearance of love and care. And it's not that he doesn't love you. He's not a monster, but he doesn't understand the feeling of being loved. So he can't really mimic it long-term. It's exhausting to pretend with the dopamine. Because he doesn't have much oxytocin, his GABA is really low. So he may have sleep issues at night, but he probably still has massive cortisol issues. In fact, that's why his stress never really goes down, is because he doesn't have that inhibitory neurotransmitter that helps regulate that cortisol. His brain says, nobody cares about me and nobody's close to me, so I have to be stressed out all the time to stay safe. Vasopressin, he's probably not bonding with people and solving problems with them, right? He pulls away and solves them completely alone in isolation, then creeps back in to see if you're mad at him. So he doesn't get much vasopressin bonding either. I have tons of videos on how to help them do that. It's one of the best bonding mechanisms for avoidant men, but most of them don't do it. They avoid the thing that would help with that. And because they don't have those open, intimate, relaxing conversations and bonds with people, they also don't have much serotonin. So their contentment is low. Their happiness is low. They feel deeply unhappy. Many of them are chronically depressed at a low level, and they don't realize it. They just think that's normal living. So again, their brain looks like this. This is how avoidant men live, with stress, no dopamine, little dopamine. Stress, no dopamine, little dopamine. This and this and this and this and this and this, with constant cortisol flooding through them all the time. Now, this is a survival adaptation from childhood, where they grew up in a world where it felt like nobody would care for them, nobody would listen to them, no one would be fair with them, people would be arbitrary, people would overwhelm them with expectations and needs, people would just stomp all over them and take from them. They grew up not having any of that oxytocin or much vasopressin or much serotonin with other people, and not much GABA. So they grew up with a brain like this that shaped them. Now, their oxytocin receptors, the research shows, will actually shift into vasopressin receptors. So they're more sensitive to vasopressin, but even less sensitive to oxytocin, if they can even get any, through the flood of cortisol running through their system all the time. This is a survival adaptation. It's a lone wolf syndrome, constant risk assessment, and avoidance of risky gambles. They avoid high risk situations, and not high risk situations like finance or life challenges. These are some of the biggest risk takers in the world. They're often adrenaline junkies. Again, that dopamine boost. They love taking calculated risks. Now, this presents in romantic relationships and sexual relationships in some pretty difficult ways. Okay. He has needs, but he wants to avoid getting harmed. He doesn't believe anybody else will ever be fair to him. So he believes that he has to throw dopamine, the only thing he understands, throw dopamine at people. And if they respond, then he hopefully will get some dopamine in return. It's an exchange. It's a transactional exchange of good feelings between people. This is how avoidant people tend to view relationships. I will give you good feelings as long as you give me good feelings. When you stop, I probably will stop as well, and I'll pull away because that tells me the relationship is done. Okay? This often leads to, at 7 months, the novelty dopamine of a relationship wears off. So the first 6 months, dopamine, a little diminishing. This is where they start really amping things up in the bedroom, and it gets more and more intense. And then 6 or 7 months, it starts to drop way off because the novelty is gone. And they haven't shifted into the long-term oxytocin bonding, the GABA bonding, the serotonin bonding, the vasopressin bonding, all those pieces that make them connected with you and that they connect and associate with you. They're not doing. It's dopamine, which then tanks. This is why at 7 months, a lot of these avoidant men come to me in coaching and say, Adam, I don't know, I'm with this wonderful woman. She's kind. She's gorgeous. She's like 10 out of 10, but I'm just not feeling it anymore. Like I can't even hardly perform in the bedroom. You know what? I'm starting to kind of think that maybe monogamy just isn't for me. Maybe it's just not the right thing. Like, is it possible that some guys just aren't meant for monogamy? Well, that aside, let's put that argument aside for a moment. What if your brain chemistry is making it so that you artificially can't do it because you're just chasing dopamine all the time? This leads men to struggle to relax into a bond. He doesn't bond with oxytocin because his cortisol never comes down. In fact, the longer your relationship goes on, the more cortisol goes up because he starts thinking that you're having expectations. He starts thinking that you're going to push on him with emotional needs. And you will, because you're looking to take it to the next level. It's a natural progression to start saying, well, hey, where is this going? What are we going to build together? That starts feeling like you are trapping him into a really high risk gamble with no payoff, diminishing payoff, because now the dopamine is less and less and less. This is why a lot of these guys won't even get into relationships. They'll get into a situationship, right? Well, we don't need to put a label on it. Don't worry about it. You know, it's fun. Let's just have the fun. Why can't we just enjoy our experiences together? And many times they're actually being legitimate because to them, that's all that they understand. Unfortunately, this will lead them to see your emotional needs and your desire for commitment as a threat, as a growing threat, because they don't get what your emotional needs are. If their brain's like this, but your brain is like this, and you're flooded with these other chemicals, they don't get that. And you're going to use words like, you know, I don't really feel connected with you. And they'll say, what the hell does that mean? Well, I just don't feel like you open up to me. Why would I open up to anybody? Nobody does that. Well, it just feels like you don't really want to share your problems with me. I don't. Nobody shares their problems with each other. It seems like you don't really trust me. Does anybody trust anybody? What are you telling me? On the inside, this is what it doesn't make sense to him. So your emotional intimacy, which does make sense, by the way, I understand that emotional oxytocin bonding that you're trying to do and the serotonin that you're trying to build together, the contentment, this is the recipe for happiness and contentment in a relationship long term. He doesn't get that. So you start sounding weird and arbitrary and confusing. It sounds like you're moving the goalposts. It sounds like you're just not happy and you're starting to demand more things. So he tries to give you more dopamine to make you happy, but that doesn't really work. Then you start getting resentful. And now he's getting less than ever in his eyes, but you're angry. And now you start pushing for a commitment. Now you start pushing for him to sign a piece of paper that gives you access to half of his finances for the rest of his life. From his perspective, this sounds like a completely irrational decision. And you're pushing harder and harder. And again, I get why. But to him, no. Your pressure to make a decision and commit feels like a horrible match. That growing tension makes him certain that this is a bad match. I should find somebody else. Somewhere where it won't be like this. He backs off. He leaves. At this point, he's thinking, this is crazy. Why would I do this? Why would anybody do this? Now, I will say this. A lot of these men, avoidant men, they're what we call ethical avoidant, where they just don't want to get hurt or hurt anybody else. There is a sliver of the population that are more manipulatively avoidant, and they totally different. They will say, I will do whatever I can because other people would do worse to me. And they may not be horribly exploitative and harmful, but they can justify a number of behaviors and love bombing, gaslighting, stonewalling over here. I'm talking about the more giant portion of society over here of avoidant men who are ethically avoidant. Okay? These are the ones that you actually want to form relationships with. These guys come into my coaching and they break up. And then a month later, they say, I feel sad. I feel kind of lonely. And they say, Adam, I need to know, did I make a mistake? What would have had to happen for us to work out? What would have to happen for this to actually be a relationship? They don't get it. They don't understand. So after the breakup, what's he thinking? After a breakup, what's he thinking? Like I said, the ethical avoidant men, what they're thinking is they just don't want to get hurt in a bad deal with too much risk. He probably didn't manipulate you, but he failed to bond with you. And now you're probably both extremely confused about why it didn't work out. He's probably pulled back. He might be barely giving you short answers. And if the more emotional texts you send him, the more he feels you are irrational and demanding, so the more he's going to continue pulling away. One of the worst things you can do is send him those warm, sappy, I love you messages. It feels like a trap to him. Or it feels like you are becoming more irrational than ever, so you're going to attack. He's probably wondering why love didn't work out this time. There's a chance he's actually questioning his part in it. A lot of avoidant men come to me and say, Adam, I'm kind of wondering, it fell apart, but did I play a role in this? I don't understand. Why did my desire for her die? And then why did this fall apart like this? Why did we start fighting so much? He's tracking risks. He's wondering if it might have been worth it, but he's mostly certain that it wasn't worth it because he doesn't understand the feeling of love quite like you do. Again, that biochemical love. For him, it's about those good feelings. But many of these men are very intelligent and very sensitive, and they also sense that there could be something more. And part of him wants that. But he doesn't know how to get it. He's probably wondering, and most of them are, this is the big piece, he's probably wondering why you seemed so irrational. And why you pushed for commitment when it's such a terrible gamble. He's probably wondering what you are thinking. One of the biggest questions I get is, will he come back? Well, maybe. These men are often very logical, and they can be reached if you've got proof that things are different. The more emotional messages you send them, the more they pull back. The more you emotionally check in with them, hey, I just wanted to make sure that you know how much I love you. It's totally okay that we're not talking, but I just miss you so much. That itself is like, why? Okay? There's ways to talk to them. It's very different from that. Many of them, though, are open to learning about attachment. Not you're avoidant and you have the issue and here's what we need to fix. But They're open to learning about your attachment. Hey, you know what? I've realized that I have this tendency called anxious attachment. I tend to chase when I feel abandoned, and I'm working on building my emotional discipline so that I make sure I don't do that. I would love to talk to you about this if you got some time, just some rational feedback, because I'm trying to improve this part of myself. And as my former partner, or, as my partner when we're on a break, I could really use your insight about where I need to improve. There's a conversation. Hey, you know what? I'm just reaching out. I've realized that a lot of the things between us, I think that there were misunderstandings. And I'd love to have a rational conversation with you over lunch sometime about maybe the pieces that didn't make sense to each one of us, the big question marks. And if those line up, then really we just have to answer those questions. I think that we could make this work. Can you have that conversation with me? There's a reasonable request where these guys would say, yeah, I'm willing to do that. Now, I will caution you again, the other type of avoidant man, he's way more manipulative. He's probably blaming you for being a psycho, being super emotional, right? The whole relationship and the breakup were your problem. He may go away for a while. I will tell you this, they're the most likely to cycle back. Okay? He's probably going to go away temporarily to one of his several exes, or one of the easy booty calls that he keeps around on the side for between relationships. He will likely come back in a few months, maybe 6 months, even up to 2 years, and he tests. He'll send you weird text messages periodically, the weird ones that are way out there, right? To test if your feelings are subsided. He thinks your brain is like this. Now he thinks your brain was like this and that you wouldn't receive dopamine, but he's hoping that now you're open to dopamine again. Hey, can we just swap dopamine for a while? Can we swap booty calls for 6 months? Can we do that situationship again? He's hoping that you're ready for fun. He doesn't track relationships like you do at all. It's all about getting those good feelings while you can and then getting out, then cycling back when the resource has renewed. Now, the first type of man you can work with, if he learns how to give and receive love and make those misunderstandings work this time. That second man, I will say, emotionally is a danger to you, and you are better off without him. I hope that you understand his thinking because he's so far like this and locked into this that he has a fundamental, deep level distrust of other people and actually has usually a negative opinion of other people. So you are simply the best of all the awful people in the world. Really not workable. Ethical men, at least, will say that you are the best of all the confused people in the world. A little bit more workable if you could show him that you're not confused. A little bit more workable. Very hard to prove the absence of evil. Very hard to prove. Okay? This is what these men are thinking. So if you think that your ex is out there right now thinking about you, do not send him an emotional text. Do not. That will only make him confused and drive him farther away. Logic, reason, examination of risk, examination of the challenges, an open negotiation between two countries to repair the relationship. Okay? More business language. If you need help with this, please just let me know. I am here to assist. But the ethically avoidant men, there's a very big chance of being able to reconnect relationships with them because many of them sense that something was missed and they're usually happy to figure out what it is. So now that we've assessed what he's thinking, what about you? I will tell you this. Most women who pair with avoidant men and most women who stay stuck on avoidant men and most women who are anxiously worrying about what that avoidant man is thinking and how to get him back instead of finding a next partner who's going to be more secure. I will just be honest. Most women like this have anxious attachment style, self-doubt, low self-esteem, a deep need for validation, deep resentments when they start feeling unappreciated for all the things that they give and give and give. And it keeps them hungry for approval from men who may never give that approval. So if you want to build a relationship with a man that can stand the test of time, if you really want to stop attracting avoidant men, or if you want to stop your emotional discharge so that you don't chase him and then throw your emotions all over him so that he stops running away and he can calm down and turn back to you and then reconnect with you. If you want to make that happen, you have to change how you think. So first, test yourself for anxious attachment style. I have another video here on this channel to help you do it. It's my video, 7 signs that you might have anxious attachment and not even know it. I will see you in that video next. And leave a comment below if you're working to get over an avoidant ex. Share your story. I would love to hear from you. I'm Adam Lane Smith, the attachment specialist, and I will see you in that next video.